Good evening, and welcome. Tonight, we delve into a deeply contentious issue that sits at the very heart of modern democracy and media ethics. The question before us is this: is it ethical to publish private information about public figures? This is a debate that forces us to weigh two fundamental values against each other: the public's right to be informed versus an individual's right to a private life. Where do we draw the line between necessary accountability and gratuitous intrusion? To help us navigate this complex terrain, I'm joined by two distinguished guests. Liam Carter is a veteran investigative journalist whose work has uncovered several high-profile scandals. He argues that transparency is paramount for holding power accountable. Sophia Chen is a renowned media ethicist and author of the book The Digital Pillory. She advocates for a stronger right to privacy, warning of the dangers of a culture of perpetual surveillance. Welcome to you both. We will begin with opening statements. Liam, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Evelyn. My position is built on a simple yet powerful conviction. Transparency is not a bug in a democratic system. It is its most essential feature. When an individual voluntarily steps into the public arena, whether as a politician, a corporate leader, or a major cultural influencer, they are making a pact. They are asking for public trust, public money, or public attention. In return, the public has an undeniable right to scrutinize them more closely than an ordinary citizen. This scrutiny must, by necessity, sometimes extend to their private lives, because private character is often an indicator of public integrity. Let's consider a practical, though hypothetical, example. Imagine a candidate for national office who builds their entire platform on fiscal responsibility and tax fairness for the working class. If my journalistic investigation uncovers that this same politician has for years used sophisticated and aggressive, albeit legal, offshore loopholes to avoid paying their fair share of taxes, is that private information? Technically, yes. But is it in the public interest? Absolutely. The public has a right to know about this profound hypocrisy. This isn't about gossip. It's about revealing a direct contradiction between the public image someone projects and the private reality of their actions. This information is critical for voters to make an informed decision. It speaks to the candidate's honesty, their empathy for the citizens they wish to govern, and their fundamental character. I am not advocating for publishing every trivial detail of a person's life. But we, the press, must retain the freedom to investigate and to make difficult judgments about what is newsworthy. The term public interest is key here. I define it as any information that empowers citizens to hold power to account and to make better informed decisions about their society. A free press, unhindered by excessive restrictions, is the only mechanism that can reliably serve that interest.
Thank you, Liam. Sophia, your opening statement.
Thank you. Liam, your argument is compelling, but I believe it rests on a dangerous premise: that the right to privacy is a conditional privilege, one that can be revoked when someone becomes prominent. I argue the opposite. The right to privacy is a fundamental human right. It is essential for dignity, personal development, and mental well-being. It should not be the price of admission for entering public service. My primary concern is with the distortion of the term, quote, public interest. Too often, news organizations have confused what is, quote, in the public interest with whatever the public happens to find interesting. Gossip, scandal, and personal tragedy are interesting, but they are rarely in the public interest. Publishing details about a politician's messy divorce, a celebrity's struggles with their mental health, or a decades-old mistake made by a public servant does not serve democracy. It serves commercial interests by generating clicks and selling papers, and it does so at a great human cost. This brings me to what I call the chilling effect. When we create a media environment where any mistake, any private vulnerability, any family problem can be weaponized and broadcast to the world, what kind of people do we encourage to lead us? we deter thoughtful, nuanced, and sensitive individuals who have lived complex lives. They will look at the brutal landscape of public life and, understandably, decide against participating. We are then left with a political class composed of the shameless, the obsessively polished, or those who have lived such sterile lives that they have nothing to hide. That is not a healthy outcome for democracy. Therefore, a clear ethical line must be drawn. Journalistic intrusion into privacy is only justifiable when it exposes verifiable corruption, illegal activity, or a direct, provable conflict of interest that impairs a person's ability to perform their public duties. Anything beyond that is not journalism. It is an infringement on human dignity that weakens, rather than strengthens, our society.
Thank you both for those clear and compelling opening statements. Let's move into our discussion. Liam, I want to start with the line Sophia has just drawn. Corruption or illegality. You mentioned hypocrisy as a key justification. So let me pose a classic scenario. A politician is having a marital affair. This is not illegal. Is it the public's business?
That is the perfect question because it highlights the need for context, not rigid rules. My answer is, it depends. If the politician is, say, a junior minister focused on transport policy who has never made their private life part of their public brand, then I would argue no, it's probably not relevant. However, if that same politician has made family values the cornerstone of their political identity, if they have campaigned on the sanctity of marriage to win votes, then the affair is absolutely a matter of public interest. The issue is not the affair itself, it is the hypocrisy. It reveals a willingness to deceive the public to gain power. That is a character trait the electorate deserves to know about.
But this creates an incredibly slippery slope, Liam. It positions the media as a kind of morality police, deciding which private behaviors are acceptable based on a politician's platform. The affair, however disappointing on a personal level, does not impact that politician's ability to understand infrastructure funding or foreign policy. By focusing on a personal failing, the media distracts the public from the issues that truly matter, their professional competence and policy decisions. It encourages a focus on personality over policy.
I disagree. It's not about being the morality police, it's about testing for authenticity. If a leader is not authentic about who they are, how can we trust what they say about policy? The two are linked.
Let me turn the question to you then, Sophia. Let's imagine a different scenario. A high-ranking government official responsible for national security has accumulated a massive, undisclosed private gambling debt. The debt itself is not illegal, and they have not yet committed any corrupt act. But this financial vulnerability makes them a prime target for blackmail or bribery by a foreign power. Should the public have a right to know about that risk?
That is a much more legitimate area for journalistic inquiry. I would concede that this situation falls closer to my ethical line. The key difference is that the private information, the debt, has a direct and provable link to their capacity to perform their public duties securely. It represents a clear vulnerability that could endanger the state. However, even then, the way it is reported is critical. It should be handled with extreme care, focusing on the national security risk, not presented as a sensational, gossipy headline about a gambling addict in power.
But this example proves my point exactly. This situation is not strictly illegal. It is a nuanced, gray area. If we tie the hands of journalists with a rigid rule that only permits reporting on verifiable illegality, an investigator might be shut down before they could ever uncover that debt. We need the freedom to follow leads, to dig into private matters when our instincts and preliminary evidence suggest there might be a significant public interest at stake. Your rule, Sophia, would prevent this kind of essential investigation from ever getting off the ground.
My rule is not designed to prevent investigation. It is designed to prevent publication without a high burden of proof. The investigation can happen, but the choice to publish must be held to the highest ethical standard. The risk of a journalist's instinct being wrong and destroying a person's life is too great to be taken lightly.
Liam, I want to circle back to something Sophia raised in her opening statement, the chilling effect. She argues that your style of accountability journalism may deter good, capable people from entering public life. How do you respond to that very serious charge?
I take that charge very seriously. It's a common argument, but I believe it's flawed. Firstly, it underestimates the integrity of many people who enter public service. They do so knowing that scrutiny is part of the job. Secondly, and more importantly, the alternative is far worse. A system that is, quote, gentler on public figures is also a system that is gentler on corruption and hypocrisy. I would rather risk deterring a few sensitive people than create a climate where misconduct can thrive in the shadows. The chilling effect I worry about is the one that freezes journalists from pursuing tough stories for fear of being accused of being intrusive.
And Sophia, Liam's core argument is that without this robust, sometimes intrusive press, we lose our primary mechanism for holding powerful people to account. If we adopt your stricter ethical lines, how do we prevent leaders from hiding unethical but not strictly illegal behavior?
Accountability does not begin and end with the press. We have internal government ethics committees, judicial oversight, and transparency laws regarding financial disclosures. These are the formal mechanisms of accountability. The press has a role, but it should be to report on the failures of those systems, not to become a parallel unregulated system of its own. When a journalist uncovers that an ethics committee was ignored, that is a story. When a journalist decides on their own that a private behavior is a firing offense, that is an overreach. We can have accountability without sacrificing our collective soul to sensationalism.
We have time for brief closing statements. Liam, please summarize your position.
A free and sometimes uncomfortably fearless press is the best, and often the last, line of defense against the abuse of power. It can be messy, and it can sometimes overstep, but in the crucial balance between total privacy for our leaders and total transparency, a healthy democracy must always lean towards transparency. We should trust our citizens to evaluate the information and judge for themselves.
Thank you. Sophia, your closing statement.
A society that relentlessly strips its public figures of all dignity and privacy will eventually get the leaders it deserves, those for whom shame is not a deterrent. We must demand a more responsible and humane standard from our media, one that serves the public interest, without destroying the individual. True accountability can and must coexist with a fundamental respect for privacy.
Liam Carter, Sophia Chen, thank you both for an incredibly insightful and respectful debate. You have laid bare the central tension between the public's need for information and a person's right to be more than just their public role. The final question, as always, is for our audience to consider. What kind of society do we want to be? One that prioritizes accountability above all, or one that preserves privacy, even for the powerful?